Oh, yeah. I mean, we're totally being trolled by the weather.
Good luck in the contest and have a good weekend. This is Golf 6 India Papa uniform. Good luck. Good luck. This is.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Chatter, a podcast from The Gist, with me, Josh Hamilton. Tatton Spiller from Simple Politics was our guest on today's show. This is Tatton's second appearance on the podcast. You'll find a link for the original episode down below. Simple Politics was created to help explain the world of politics to those who don't know the difference between their common law and the House of Commons. We get into the government response to coronavirus, the ideological shift in the two main political parties, and the development and growth of Simple Politics in the 2 years since we last spoke. Before the show starts, don't forget, pre-order my book. Completely shameless, just go and do it. And then I would like to say you won't have to listen to me talk about it, but I will be plugging it endlessly. But you could just, get it over with and pre-order it now. Don't forget to subscribe to our email list or to the podcast itself if you don't want to miss another episode of Chatter. So, Tatton, thanks for appearing on the show. It's great to see you this morning at nice and bright 9 o'clock.
Absolute pleasure. Making the best of the day.
Well, early bird catches the worm and whatnot. So, it's been a while, as you said, since we spoke there before we started recording. So, how are things going at Simple Politics? How have the last year or two been? It's been a wild ride watching politics. How's it been trying to explain it?
Oh, I mean, it's been a wild ride. Like actually, 2 days ago was Simple Politics' 5th birthday.
5th birthday?
Because I set it up to start, because when it was set up, I had this idea that it was going to be a website that explained every bill that was going through Parliament. Because the reason, just a bit of backstory, one of the reasons I set it up was because I was a teacher and there was an education bill going through Parliament, and there was talk about the education bill kind of really making big changes, which it did in the end, because there was the education bill that changed it from grades to numbers, GCSE and A-level. And I was looking for details, and nobody was breaking down the whole law, saying what was going on. I thought, well, that's wrong. Like, teachers should be able to find out what the education bill without reading the whole bill, which is kind of legalese jargon. So the plan was to have a website going through all the bills, and everyone could come to the website and follow what was going on. And after the election seemed like the best time to launch it, because that's when we're starting afresh with lots of new laws. And that was my plan. I was going to plod along, and everyone was going to start coming to the website to find out about it. I mean, who knew that the 2015 general election would launch so much? It was the first Conservative majority. It was all supposed to be so calm. David Cameron was going to set about doing his thing for 5 years. And then, of course, there was Brexit. And then, of course, there was the 2017 general election. There was the 2019 general election. And then we left Europe. And now there's this virus.
Have we technically left yet? I thought that was December.
No, we've technically left.
Okay.
We're in the transition period, or the implementation period, okay. But we have left the European Union. And it's...
If anyone didn't get the memo.
Yeah, well, absolutely. And it is really confusing, because we're kind of we have left, but also we still got lots of the things that you get as being part of the European Union. But it's just, it feels like it's all been a warm-up until the 2019 general election, which I think where we really found a voice. And now with all this virus things, I'd like to apologize to the way I'm speaking. It's...
Are you being epidemiophobic?
Well, I think, grammar's overrated, clearly. I think that with this virus, the voice and the service that Simple Politics provides has become... People are finding it really, really useful. I get messages every day talking about how we reduce anxiety, because rather than following the news, they just have a look at the bite-sized chunks we provide, and it feels less all the time, all imploding, all less claustrophobic, and it's just wonderful to do that. So yeah, and we've grown exponentially. In December last year, we had 90,000 Instagram followers in December, and it's now mid-May, and I have 190,000 Instagram followers.
Holy fuck, that's a huge amount of growth.
It's people have we've found a way of doing things that people find really useful, and it's really all taken off in the last 6 months.
Wow, that's fantastic. I remember actually about 5 years ago saying that Britain needed someone along the lines of, are you familiar with Vox in America?
No.
Okay. So it's run by this, or was run by a couple of guys, but it was founded by this woman whose name escapes me because she doesn't write for the site. But this other guy called Ezra Klein and Matt Iglesias, and they host some of their podcasts. But essentially, like, they pioneered the idea of explainer journalism. Like, they were the people that really, like, put it on the map. And anytime you see one of those articles that's like, how this happens explained, that's pretty much their fault.
Oh, okay.
But I find not everything they put out from, like, to be completely, like, without slant or bias, but I generally find that their explainer way of like presenting the news made it much easier to consume. And I find, especially of late, you guys have been doing something very similar, probably due to the expanded team. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that actually. When you put together the team for the 2019 general election, like, what was your thought process there? Like, have you ever like managed a team that size, and how was it trying to cover what I would say is probably the most mad election ever in terms of just sheer not caring about what's actually happening and just saying things?
It was my reaction, we'd just done so many Brexit votes. I had a colleague called Hattie at the time, and she was leaving anyway because she got this fancy job somewhere else, kind of running the world. And she was leaving. It was Brexit all the time, these massive Brexit votes, and the Brexit votes they were all happening at 10 o'clock at night. And I get up quite early in the morning, so that's quite late. It's a long working day. And there was talk about this election, and I was like, well, the later it gets, it's going to be in December. It can't be in December. And then suddenly it was like, yeah, no, we're going to do this. We're going to have an election. And I'd been advertising for someone to replace Hattie anyway. And I was like, I need a team here. So I asked my people to help us out financially so we could get a team together. And they were so generous. It made me cry on more than one occasion. And so I had enough money to pay to get 3 people part-time.
Wow.
25 hours or something. For the month, for the 5 weeks of the election. And it was, managing a team. I can manage a few people. It's what I really believe in, so I can teach people. I can talk to people about what I want to happen. That's not a problem. Getting people up to speed when there's an election on, and you're absolutely right, it's a really hard, nebulous election. There weren't clear policy announcements every day. It was all a bit lost. It was much harder to cover than 2017 election. The 2017 election had clear narratives. And 2019 didn't. So it was much harder to cover. But I had this team, and it was Christmas, so people were buying loads of stuff from us as well. So there's just loads going on. But we did what we could. And then, and then the money was gone. Because that's how one-off donations work. Yeah. People were very, very generous. We covered the election, and then we're left in January staring down the barrel of 5 years of a Conservative majority government, having had a year of massive interest in politics. It felt like 2020 was going to be a huge dip. And what does simple politics do when you've just got a Conservative government rolling on, doing whatever they want to do. And also, the money's all gone. So I kept on. What Diane, the wonderful Diane, is my colleague now. She was with us, with me, over the election, and she stayed on since then. So it's just the two of us again. She's also part-time. I mean, it's working really well for her at the moment. I think she might listen to this and go, "No, it's not." But it's working really well for her because
She's sitting. She's like, "Oh, I was going to confront him today, but he seems to think it's going so well."
But the part-time nature of it means that she can homeschool and feed children and husbands and still do this around it. And so she does our daily briefing coverage almost every day. I like to say we share it. I think I do one every month. But that's still officially sharing, so it's fine.
Yes, as long as you're helping out sometimes.
Sorry, you asked me a question, and I've got no idea what it was.
I was just asking you about your running a team and the election and everything. So you gave a pretty good answer. I'll take that.
The way I run a team is I believe in this stuff so much, and I want it to be so good that I basically throw enthusiasm at my colleagues until they cry or share it, or both. Mostly crying, I think.
Sure. Well, I don't know if that is that not the sort of equivalent of being enthusiastic about politics in Britain in 2020.
I mean, it's all quite a lot, isn't it? It's all a bit much.
It is.
But it is like, it's long hours. It's very, very long hours, and it's very intense because there's stuff that comes in all the time. There's news alerts. There's changes. Things happen. We've got this daily briefing coming up every day, and there's leaks around what that's going to be about. There's I feel a lot of pressure at the moment. But it's good. I mean, this whole thing is set up to be really useful for people, and now people are finding it useful. So it's wonderful.
Well, that's ideal. So another thing I wanted to ask you about was we kind of touched on the idea anyway, in that 2017 was a very almost normal election looking back upon it. Okay,
almost
there was an upset in a way, but like the result everyone expected almost came to pass, and it was a pretty standard election in terms of like just policy ideas and an ideological sort of battle as such for left versus right, and like as you said, it was very well defined. And then by the time we got to 2019, although Corbyn's Labour was well defined, they managed to blur the lines themselves a little bit as to what they actually stood for. And Boris came out with this like announcement he was going to like fund loads of infrastructure, and like potentially that was just to counteract like fears that people would be drawn in by Labour spending, and he wanted to offer something of his own. But now we're really seeing he's still pushing, going, okay, we're going to pump billions into investing in the country. And on the other side of the Commons, Keir Starmer is saying, okay, we need to moderate this a little bit. The party, he feels it was too far left under Jeremy Corbyn and under the sort of rule of momentum in the lower parts of the party in the CLP. And now Keir and the moderates have basically got control of the whole party back, and they're kind of, well, we're yet to see exactly where they go in a policy direction. But are we watching like a transition of the Conservatives from like a really traditionally right-wing party to one that's more blurred, and the same with the Labour Party?
Well, Boris Johnson is quite hard to define policy-wise. I think he described himself as a One Nation Conservative, and he generally in London, his policies were quite Londonish. They were quite liberal. I mean, he also bought illegal water cannon with which to fire at protesters. So we've got both sides of him there, and he became prime minister. He called the election. He got us out of the European Union. He said he'd
He
do
got
that. He
Brexit
did it.
done.
He got Brexit done. And this is where he was supposed to be launching. Right now, he's supposed to be launching his legislative program where we'd really see what he's going to do, what his priorities are. And we're not seeing that. So it's very hard to tell what's going on. I mean, they are borrowing an unbelievable amount of money at the moment.
Yes.
But that's not an ideological choice.
No.
It's because we don't want people to starve in this country. So they have to borrow the money. And Keir Starmer's become leader at a time when we don't really know what Keir Starmer stands for as leader of the Labour Party yet, because it's just about this virus. I mean, he did say in Prime Minister's questions yesterday, or no, he didn't. He said in his response to Boris Johnson's announcement, he said, "This, unlike Labour of the past, we won't fight the government for the sake of fighting the government," or words to that effect. So there was a little dig at the Labour of the past. So we can tell we know he's not going to be Jeremy Corbyn.
No.
We know he's going to be not.
I don't think
not,
you could get like a more contrasting leader to follow.
But he's not, because I mean, if you listen to a lot of people, you're either Jeremy Corbyn. If you're not Jeremy Corbyn, you're Tony Blair. And Keir Starmer is neither Tony Blair nor Jeremy Corbyn. It sounds like a really obvious thing to say.
Names are different. They're different ages.
I mean, they look different. They have, I presume, they like their eggs in a different way.
Potentially.
I think Jeremy Corbyn likes a coddled egg.
That's gone probably with some of his own jam. Which wouldn't go down bad right now, actually. You make me hungry.
I've heard, I know someone who's had a jar of his jam.
Oh, really?
And it's apparently very good.
Well, it is like infamous now, if not just amongst, the Express readers. But so you mentioned there that you think, well, that you mentioned there that all this spending that's going on isn't an ideological choice. It's just necessity that they basically have gone, oh dear, it's either we do this or hundreds of thousands of people could starve and get thrown out of houses, and there is basically no way to keep the economy running without doing this or putting what we perceive to be a lot of people's lives at risk.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think, because I had a politics student on last week called Ryan Hoey, and we discussed whether austerity was a political choice, because he was arguing that essentially austerity is helping us now because we were financially prudent, and now we have that vat of money to spend, whichever way you want to look at it. I'm not sure I completely agree, but that's the argument. Do you think that this is proving to some Tories that maybe the government has a bit more power to spend money than they were willing to admit, or do you think it's just emergency that's necessitating this?
Well, I think that the country's balance book was not brilliant at the beginning, but it was, we had more money in the bank or less debt than we did before. But I think that, all of this just blows everything out of the water. The amount we're borrowing. So the furlough scheme alone is costing twice what the NHS costs per day.
That is an absolutely mad figure.
That's been extended till October. Sure, after July, there's going to be some changes or whatever, but that's a hell of a long time. But if people can't work, they need some money to pay. Fortunately, we don't have many heating bills because it's the summer now or whatever. But there's the electricity and food and rent and these things that matter. So I don't really want to get drawn into ideology and who was right. Who does this show is right?
Yes, I do realize you're meant to be above that at Simple Politics.
I mean, no, above but yeah, like it is. We are spending, we are borrowing huge amounts at the moment, and it will have to be paid back. And then we're going to get some really strong ideological decisions.
Yeah, like
How's it going to get paid back? How fast is it going to get? We're not there yet, but right now we're just borrowing a lot.
Yeah, you see, I've long been sympathetic, at least, to the ideas of modern monetary theory, where they basically argue that government debt is almost irrelevant, and that we shouldn't concern ourselves with it too much because it's like such low yield bonds over such like a long period of time, especially for the UK government and the Bank of England, that there is no reason to worry about just spending loads of money when you need to. So I guess we're going to get to see if there's any like merit to that theory in the next couple of years.
I mean, well, we'll see. I mean, we do have a Conservative government, so they will be quite keen to start paying it back. And yeah, there is a theory. There is a theory that you've just outlined, but there's plenty of other theories.
Oh yeah, no, 100%. It's intriguing. You mentioned actually about Blair there. I find if you just close your eyes when Rishi Sunak is talking, I can hear Tony Blair in the intonation of his voice. It's quite disturbing in a way, because then you open your eyes and it's a Tory, and you're like, hang on, what? You're not what? But so the government has been trying to get a handle on this entire crisis. It's been absolutely mad trying to watch them struggle with like real-time science coming in. So I know you're not quite able to say like opinionally how you think they've handled it, but there's been, yeah. What do you think of the whole crisis thus far?
It's just been. I mean, it's just taken. I remember doing a first post on coronavirus in January. What was going on in Wuhan? And I was talking to Diane, and we're just, is this gonna? Because like we didn't expect it. Like I know everyone said it could come here. It was like, oh yeah, it could come here. But SARS didn't, and swine flu didn't, and Ebola didn't, and it felt like the West didn't really have these things. These are things that happened elsewhere in the world, and they were awful, and we should all donate to help them out and whatever. But it didn't really come to us. And then it got, the story got closer and closer and closer and closer. I was doing shows around the country, like this kids show that I do. Full rooms, lots of chatting afterwards, doing, signing books. And this was, this Italy at this point was all in lockdown or whatever. But even then, I couldn't quite imagine us going into lockdown.
Yeah, it's a really strange thing. I was watching Joe Rogan did a podcast last week with Elon Musk for a second time.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fantastic interview. Elon Musk is just great to listen to. He's like a little bit odd. He's like, he's got some like social wall or something in him that he's very considered when he talks. But it means that you really want to listen to everything he says, because he sits there and almost like he hasn't heard you for a minute, and then he comes out with this really considered answer. It's brilliant. I say it like I'm interviewing him myself, but he was essentially saying like it's a real interesting conversation it's a really interesting conversation that we're going to have now about civil liberties, because he is of the opinion, whether you agree with him or not, that you can tell people that you think they should stay at home, but you cannot compel people to stay in their house if they don't want to. And I hadn't it like crossed my mind, but I haven't like heard anyone quite articulate it in that way.
But this is how it always is. We are policed by consent.
Yeah.
We have police on our streets, but if as a society we wanted to all get rid of the police, we could swap the police.
Well,
I mean, like we can all turn on the police.
That depends on how much you believe in the institution of government as a force for doing what the public want.
But it's all consensual.
Oh yeah,
we accept the rule because we think that it all makes us all better off. So absolutely, you can be asked to do something, but you can't be forced to do it. Like, we can't be compelled to do anything unless we're actually under arrest. Like, that's how policing works. That's how liberal democracies get by.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting one by the time we get to the end. I think there's going to be a lot more talking done before we really get anywhere near normality. But final question for you, Tatton.
Yes.
How has your book release been? We talked about 2 years ago. You released the breakdown last year in May, I think it was.
The breakdown came out in spring last year, and then this year the paperback version has come out. And yeah, I mean, it's just really great. Like, I'm really proud of it. I think it stands for it. It's everything I believe in. I put all my heart in it, and now people are buying it and taking it home to read. And like, I'm selling quite loads of copies at the moment. It's in all bookshops and on Amazon and that kind of thing. But I also sell it through my little shop, and yeah, I'm selling hundreds of copies, and people are reading it at home during all of this, and that makes me. I can't really believe it, to be honest. It's like, that's just my words. It doesn't matter, but it's wonderful.
Would you like to give us like a 30-second synopsis of what it's about? Maybe someone will click on it and buy it.
Well, it talks you through how other people think. Like, it's about we're living through the breakdown because we don't listen to each other, we don't talk to each other, we don't think about each other. We're just, if I disagree with you, you must be wrong, and worse than wrong, you must be a terrible person and probably quite stupid. And the book says, hang on, let's have a look at why people believe in socialism, why people believe in liberalism, why people believe in conservatism. And then once we've got those basics, it goes through some issues. So it goes through privatization and immigration and tax and spend. And it looks at all of those issues from those ideological perspectives so that you can understand why someone else might be in favor of the privatization of the NHS. Like, that doesn't make them a demon.
No.
It just they think the NHS would be better run like that. And so it unlocks other people's thinking so that you can understand people better, so that you can have better political conversations.
Well, that's quite a sell. There you go. You're selling better conversations to people.
Yeah. I mean, that's what Civil Politics is all about. Civil Politics is all about helping people understand what other people think, helping people understand the issues, helping people form their own opinions, and helping people have better conversations.
Okay, well, that's a fantastic place to leave it. So thanks so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe to the podcast, pre-order my book, and sign up to our email list. Next week, we've got interviews with Peter Reynolds from Clear and with Sam McBride, the author of Burned. So subscribe if you don't want to miss those. Until next time, thanks for watching.